Hello. So today we're going to be taking a look at X-Plane 11, the public beta version. So the public beta got released a few days ago, and I did a live stream on this, but I said that I was going to do a bit more structured video on it. So this is that video which in a lot better quality as well. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be speaking about X-Plane 11, and I'm going to be comparing it to X-Plane 10. I don't feel that it would be fair to compare X-Plane 11 to FSX. FSX is now a 10-year-old game. X-Plane 11 has been developed and is being released this year, in the end of 2016. So I don't think it's fair to compare games which are 10 years apart. So a lot of the comparisons I do are going to be between X-Plane 11 and X-Plane 10. There are some core differences between the simulators that I might mention, but I'm not going to say, for example, oh, look at the default scenery in FSX and compare it to the default scenery in X-Plane 11, because the two games were developed at vastly different times. Computing power has changed, so I don't think it's going to be a fair comparison. Anyway, disclaimers all out of the way, let's talk about X-Plane 11. So this is the splash screen, or the home screen for X-Plane 11. You can see we're sat in a 737 cockpit at night about to land. Now, on the left hand side there, you can see that you've got a few options. The user interface in X-Plane 11 is something that has vastly changed compared to X-Plane 10. In the past, a lot of people who played with X-Plane said that the user interface was it was really ugly, it was really clunky, a lot of it didn't make sense. It wasn't intuitive, is the word I'm looking for. People were struggling to find the options they needed. So if I compare just this home screen to X-Plane 10's home screen just now, just so you can see a comparison of the first screen that you see when you load both sims, you can see that X-Plane 10, the game actually boots straight into a quick flight preparation screen. It doesn't have a menu system at all. So that's something that's like the first the most basic change that you will see between the two. And so I can showcase that a little bit more. So if I go into the settings here in X-Plane 11, you can see that the menu here, you can see that you can go straight into the settings and various options. You have general, sound, graphics, all the kind of the basic stuff that you would expect. Now, interestingly enough, that's a lot different to X-Plane 10, because in X-Plane 10, as far as I can tell, you had to actually load a flight. You actually had to start a flight before you could get access to the menu system. So that's a very nice change. That's a very convenient and... what words am I looking for here? Never mind, forget it. You know what I mean though, it's very, it's good to have the menu available as soon as you start. So that's one of the first changes. Now, one of the concerns that I have at the moment with the UI in X-Plane 11 is that a lot of the, the various options are all on these kind of sliders, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. However, if we go into the graphics, you can see that you can change the visual effects here. So you've got minimal, low, medium, high, and then you can change the texture quality. However, what I've noticed in the X-Plane 11 beta version, remember this is a beta version, is that there are not really many very specific options to fine-tune your graphics details. So for example, if I throw up another screenshot of X-Plane 10 on the screen just now, you can see that you've got a lot of checkboxes for various things. There's a lot of fine tuning that you can do with X-Plane 10, and if you have a look back at X-Plane 11, you can see that you don't really have those options available to you here. Now, as I said, this is a beta version, so that might be changed when they do their full public release. They may have all of those options, in the main release then. It's just something I've noticed, and is something that I'll point out a bit later on in this video as well, is having these slider systems and not being able to fine-tune certain things. You'll see that in a moment when I talk about setting up a flight. With regards to setting up your controls, in X-Plane 11 it is a lot easier. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up the control screen for X-Plane 10 just now, so you can just try and appreciate the struggle that X-Plane 10 users had. Okay, so here we are in X-Plane 10, and you can see the various options. It all looks a bit sensible at the moment, but then if we get into a few tabs later, you can see that people who were wanting to set up a controller in the past would have to work through screens like this. It was a struggle. As I said, it was a real struggle. However, we come back now into the future, back into the 21st century in Explain 11. Here we have the setup screen for the joystick. Now, Explain 11 is really clever because it should, if you've got a common controller, it should recognize it and it will automatically throw up a picture of it on the screen. So I've got this Logitech Extreme 3D Pro and it's recognized it and it's given me a picture of it. And you can see that the way that you can adjust the buttons is actually quite a lot more intuitive compared to Explain 10. For example, I often use these two buttons on the top here. On the controller it's listed as button 5 and button 6. In Explain 10 it's 8 and 9. That's not a problem. But these two buttons I usually use for flaps controls. So retract the flaps and then extend the flaps. So if I wanted to set the control for that, I would go to click on that button there, or I would expect it to pop up here, but that's fine, not a problem. It does highlight it, so you can see flaps down a notch. So if I wanted to change that, so for example, I wanted to, retract the landing gear using that button, you can see that it gives you a list of every single control that you can do. And there are a lot of them. However, if you're not sure what you need, let's just say gear. You can do a search up at the top and then it brings up the most relevant results there for you. So let's see, landing gear up, down, landing gear toggle would be the one. So if I press a button, landing gear goes down. If it's down already, press the button again, it goes up. So that's how you can change the button settings, and you can see it's a lot easier. So you can just sort of use a visual reference here, and then obviously you saw the list of actions which are available there. So a lot better, as you can see, compared to Explain 10, it is a lot better and a lot more intuitive and a lot more user friendly. So I think that's enough gushing about the user interface. Let's get in and let's actually have a flight. Let's have a look and see what is actually going on within the simulator. So go to new flight here, and this gives you your quick flight configuration page. Now you have 4 different sort of panels on the screen here. You've got an aircraft selection screen, you've got your location, weather, and then time and date down here. So it's very easy. You can see all of the planes. I've got a little thumbnail picture there, so you can see what the plane is, also the name of the plane. Let's take a Cessna Skyhawk just for our first example flight here. You'll see that there's a little customize button here. So if we go into customize, you can see that up here we have different different paint jobs, different liveries, and you can scroll through them all. Can you click and drag that, or just scroll wheel? Okay, I'm going through by scroll wheel, but you can see you can look through your different paint jobs there. Oh, you can click and drag. Okay, that's fine. And also, if you want to change the plane itself, you can just click left and right and look at different planes that you have. Down here you've got 2 buttons, weight, balance of fuel, and failures. Now, I said earlier that one of the concerns I have was that you couldn't fine tune things within the simulator. This is where I first noticed it, and this is where it would I think it would be a problem. As I said, this is a beta version of the software, so this might change in time for the full release. However, if I wanted to do fuel, for example, I mean, that's all good, and you can change between imperial and metric. That's all nice. That's all good. That's all very friendly. However, if I want, say, 92 kilograms, like 92.6, 90.6, 90. No, I want 92 kilograms exactly. I can't see a way to change that value. I would expect to be able to click on that value and then type it in manually how much I want. So there's that kind of fine tuning. That was where I noticed that. As I said, it's a very little nitpicky minor problem, and again, this might be changed in time for the main release. I don't know, but that's one sort of slight concern that I noticed, and one slight problem, I guess you would say, that I've got with the simulator. But not to worry, it's not a big thing, as I said. Also, the failures within Explain seem to be a lot more well, not complex, but you can. It's very easy to set the failures up, and it gives you a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Control over the failures and how they happen and when they occur. So let's say, for example, electrical failure, main battery. So you can see that we've got a green sort of a green dots next to all of these. You can say always working, failed. So if you change that to failed, you can see that we've got pardon me, a red dot now. And you might have noticed on the drop down there that you can also set this to fail at a particular time. So you can actually action the failure by a key combination there, Control F. You can fail it at a specific altitude, and then see that you can dial that in. That's what I would expect on the weight and fuel, that sort of thing there. So again, that might change in time for the main game, but you can set it at a specific altitude, at a specific speed. 8,000 KIAS. Good luck. Set an exact time. A set time, or set a mean time. So you can see that it gives you a lot of control over the failures, and that's something that anyone who's wanting to maybe practice some abnormal procedures, like an engine issue, or anyone who's a professional pilot or an instructor, you can see that having these options available would give them the ability to really test their students in specific scenarios. And you can see anything that you can think of that could fail on the plane would be there. So you've got lights, controls, instruments, engines, wings. I don't know if that means the wings will fall off, but you can fail wings apparently. So there you go. So that's a very nice kind of failures mode within the game. Another thing they've changed a lot is the location and being able to set where the plane starts. So if I go home to Inverness, for example, choose EGPE there, and then go to customize, you can see that I get a nice little map of the airport, and you can see that we've got, you can choose the different runways that you want to start at. You can choose different ramps there. So pardon me, you have a very nice kind of visual way to select where you start. Of course, you've got just a list of locations here, or runways. On runway, oh, that's interesting. You can set yourself onto an approach as well, so that's very handy if you want to practice approaches and landings. But you can also, if you're not familiar with an airport, you can also just choose it by clicking on the dots on the map there, which is very cool. Weather is, and time of day is very similar to FSX in some ways, because you have a lot of different presets, so you can run through them there, obviously increasing in severity. And then time of day is just a very simple slider, and I believe in the time of day you can go in and set a specific time. And the weather is very nice, because you can go in and you can pretty much create your own weather conditions. I believe, can you, let's see, serious. There we go. Yeah, I knew there was some way of increasing the cloud layers there. And then, of course, on the right hand side, you can see you've got all these various different options. So that's one of the things that X-Plane boasts, is that it gives the user a lot of control over the simulator. However, they've really taken the time and made the effort to make the actual user interface a lot more, a lot more friendly. I mean, all of this was stuff that you could do in X-Plane 10, I believe. But it just, the way it's presented to the user now is a lot more friendly, so that's very good. I'm still gushing about the user interface. I shouldn't be. I should shut up and get on with it. Anyway, right, let's do it. So, Cirrus Clouds, 12 AM local, starting at Inverness, go. So the loading times in X-Plane 10 are not too bad. They're probably a bit longer than FSX in my experience. Even with all my add-ons that I have for FSX, the loading time is still a bit longer in X-Plane 11 than it is in FSX. Okay, and here we are in the plane after it's loaded up. So, a couple of disclaimers. Now, you might see that the VOR indicators on the right-hand side here are going to start glitching out. Apparently, that is a known problem in the beta, so that's not an issue with the game. It is just a bug that's in the beta just now, and I've been told that X-Plane are aware of that, and they will fix that in time for release. With regards to the other thing here, I've got at the top of the screen, you can see I've got a little data readout which is showing me my frames per second. At the moment I'm hovering about 40 frames per second, so that gives you an idea of the kind of the graphic settings that I've got with the computer that I've got. Hopefully that gives you a much better perspective of the performance relative to graphic settings and the computer that I've got and everything there. Okay, so what I want to do just now is actually just take off and then demonstrate another thing demonstrate a couple of things which have improved in X-Plane 11 over X-Plane 10. What the developers have done is they've actually spent a lot of time working on the sound engine and also the lighting engine within, or the way the lighting is rendered within X-Plane 11 to give a much more realistic and immersive experience. So what I'm going to do is just going to take off, level off, and then fly along for a little bit, and hopefully give you guys a little bit of a look at the default scenery within X-Plane 11 as well. As I said, I'm flying from Inverness, so I know the local area quite well, so I can certainly advise if the scenery is accurate or not. So we'll just turn left. We're heading over the Murray Firth just now. We'll head back towards the city of Inverness. We'll have a look and see what it's like. So there's the airport down there. I must say, for using default buildings and generic buildings there, the layout of the airport is actually quite accurate. Like, the buildings are all in the right locations, the taxiways. The apron is slightly off. In the real world there isn't that grass gap there, but the ground scenery is very impressive. And the other thing that's also very accurate are the various roads and railways, what you might call the land class in FSX. All the roads are very accurately positioned. I can look on the ground and say, yes, I definitely know that road. That's the sort of the back, kind of the back entrance into the airport there. The main one heads out to a main road out here. So that's very good if you're a VFR pilot. Having accurate road placements is very important for VFR flying. So tick in the box for X-Plane on that front. Having a look here, scenery is quite foggy at the moment. This is one of the things that they've spent a lot of time on, is this kind of atmospheric haze and atmospheric fog. After spending a bit more time in the simulator, again, I'm not a real pilot, so I can't comment if this is accurate or not. It seems a little bit much for me. Like, at the moment, like, this is meant to be a fairly clear day, and this seems just a bit too much. But as I said, I'm not a pilot, so I don't know if a pilot's perspective is different. Seeing the world up in the sky is a lot different to seeing it from the ground. But one thing I would show off at the moment as well is you can actually, not that option. If you're not sure about the weather, you can actually go in and just change it on the fly. Pun intended, change it on the fly. So if you do that, okay, so you see I set the clouds to clear, and it's still very hazy. I'm not sure if that is accurate or not. Again, that just seems a bit much for me, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. But you can go in and you can edit the flight immediately, and the changes are immediate within the simulator there. You can see you've got traffic on the main roads down there. Got another aircraft just passing by. So you can really see that main roads now kind of popping out into existence. You got the runway back there. So again, that's I know that road. I've driven down that road. I can, I'm sure if I flew over Inverness, I could probably find my way back to my house. So that's those are good marks for X-Plane, is that they've got good default scenery. And if we come back to daylight, Again, that's the preset. I mean, I can't really make out too many details at a distance. Again, I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but you can see that the default scenery is not that bad. You saw the graphic settings that I've got. With the accurate road placement, you've got auto-gen scenery, so don't expect to see every single building in every single city accurately reproduced, but I mean, that looks alright to me. You've got the bridge there, that's Keswick Bridge in Inverness. You've got the River Ness there. If we fly a little bit further along, you've got the Caledonian Canal, which runs just a bit further away from that. This is all accurate. I lived up in this part of Scotland for 20 odd years. I recognise all of this. I can tell you all of these roads, all of these railways as well are accurate. This is all accurate placement. So top marks for X-Plane for that. I'm really impressed to see that. Now the next thing I want to show off is external views. Okay, so here we are outside of the plane. What I had to do is I just had to adjust the audio as well, just so you guys can actually hear me as I'm trying to explain different things. But you can see that what they've done is they've done a lot of work on aircraft lighting. So you can see that the sort of the reflections and the way that the aircraft is being lit by the environment is a lot more realistic. Like, for example, if I move slow, you can see the sort of the light sheen moving along the tops of the wings there. You should be able to make out all of the details, like all of the rivets and the different sort of panels on top as well. So pretty decent model for being the default aircraft. It's a pretty decent 3D model. And you can see the light sheen off the engine curling there as well. So that was something that they highlighted that they've done a lot of work on. And the other thing is that they've spent a lot of time working on the sound. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and roll the plane out steady. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tweak the sound levels, but listen out for the engine tone and the sounds changing as I move around the plane. So just let me tweak the sound settings very quickly, and just listen out for the subtle changes as we move around the aircraft. Okay, so hopefully you could hear the sound like change. You could hear the different distinct tones of the engine and the sort of the noise coming off the propeller, especially as it moved from in front of and behind the propeller. You can really hear the difference change then. So that, to me, that sounds very realistic and that sounds very impressive. Again, I've not been around a real Cessna 172, so I don't know if the actual basic sounds are accurate or not. But certainly the way that the sound changes depending on where the camera is in relation to the aircraft impresses me. Again, it's just a personal opinion here. And the other thing I want to just bring your attention back to is if you have a look at the frames per second. Hopefully you can read that on the video, but that's reading about 45. It's bouncing between 43 and 45 a lot up there. So the performance, inside of the plane and outside of the plane really doesn't change that much, which again is not fair to compare it to FSX, because X-Plane has been designed to and programmed to work on modern computers. FSX hasn't. But again, that's just a showcase of X-Plane 11 here. Now, another thing that I want to talk about very quickly is, I said that the 3D model of this aircraft is pretty accurate, or well, I don't know if it's accurate, but it looks pretty nice, with the rivets, and you can see the different panels on top of the wing there. The actual aircraft handling model as well. Now, again, it's not for. I'm going to compare this to FSX because it's a core aspect. It's one of the main differences, is how aircraft within X-Plane are modeled compared to FSX. So, FSX uses something called lookup tables. Basically, those are massive spreadsheets with performance data. So the simulator in FSX, I think, I might be wrong here, but I think the way it works, the way the simulation works, is that the simulation is constantly checking a bunch of parameters. It's basically saying, okay, the aircraft is pointing at pitch of 5 degrees, the throttle is at 87%, the roll angle is minus 10%. It's basically adding all of those values together, and then it's going to the spreadsheet and saying, right, if pitch is at this, the throttle is at this, the throttle is at that, the bank angle is at that, then the aircraft will do this. It basically takes a bunch of inputs, a bunch of different things, looks at them all and says, right, given that the plane is doing this at this point, then its behavior should be that. That's how FSX works, to my knowledge. X-Plane has a completely different system to modeling the physics. It uses something called, now I can't remember the name, I really should have looked this up, but it's something along the lines of blade theory or element blade theory. Basically, how that works is the aircraft is broken into several chunks. Like you've got a wingtip is one chunk, this section of wing is another chunk, this section of wing is another chunk, this section of wing is another chunk. And each of those chunks, the actual physics or the actual airflow over each of those chunks is being modelled. And depending on how much lift each chunk generates will determine how the aircraft acts. Now, I'm going to see if I can find the... because there is a way of showing that within the simulator. I'm going to see if I can find that just now. Okay, so this is actually a different flight later on in the day, but you can see that I found out the key combination for the to bring up what's called the flight model, and you can see that we've got these green lines which extend above the wing. This is actually indicating how much lift is being generated by each wing. So you can see that if I pull back on the stick, that creates more lift from the wings, and if I push forward, you can see the lines get shorter, meaning there's less lift being generated by the wings. Now, if I also turn the plane, you can see that as I turn, if you look at the outer half of the wing, you can see the left side is producing more lift. And if I turn the other way, obviously it's opposite. The right side produces more lift. So there's a cool little visualization of how each kind of chunk of the wing is generating lift there, which is pretty good because I guess it forces developers to build accurate models if the model itself is the one that's generating the sort of the physics of the plane there. Also, another thing to note is if you have a look in the distance, you can see that the atmospheric haze isn't too bad. So I guess in the flight before I had some sort of atmospheric setting which wasn't quite right. So I might have made a little slight mistake earlier on in the video there. Okay, so before I wrap up this video, I just wanted to take a quick look at one of the passenger jets. So I chose this one. This is the Boeing 737, the default Boeing 737 in X-Plane. And if you have a look at it here, you can see this, again, it's a fairly detailed model. If I zoom in right in, you can see all of the rivets are modeled there. I don't think they're modeled like in 3D. They're just kind of painted on there, but you can see it's a fairly well detailed model again. You don't have things like hydraulic lines running down the landing gear, but apart from that, the model seems to be very accurate. You've got little vanes on the wing here, the APU inlets, sort of scoop, I guess you would call it, is there as well. So again, a fairly detailed model. And if we jump into the internal cockpit, or the 3D cockpit, you can see that we have again fairly well detailed. Now, I'm not good with Boeing, so I'm not going to be able to start this up, I'm afraid. But if I have a look at the overhead panel, I'll try and move a few switches and see if I can get the plane doing something at least. One thing that's also really handy in X-Plane is that it has these camera controls where you can move up and down, left, right and left, and then forwards and backwards. So it's kind of what the EasyDock add-on does for FSX, but you have it as standard in X-Plane, which is very handy. So if I just get the overhead in view here. Now, I'm not sure if the default planes in X-Plane are full fidelity. Like, by that I mean, I don't know if all of the exact systems and everything are modeled. But I do believe that you can flick most of these switches, and again, I'm not sure if these switches will have an accurate effect on the plane. So if I start the hydraulics pumps, do I need to give the plane time for the hydraulics to pressurize or anything like that? I don't know, I'm afraid. I know that you can do a lot in FSX as well, but with FSX planes, I think it's more of a case of if the battery switch is on and if the fuel pump is on, then the engine will start. You know, it doesn't matter about doing things in the right order. It's a lot more just check if this switch is in the right position and that one is in the right position, then it will go. It doesn't fully accurate and simulate all of the systems. But I believe if I hit that, that'll give us the battery, and then I think I could turn the APU on there. And I'm hearing the APU start up. It's probably a bit too low on the video, but I can hear the APU is starting up there. And I'm not sure how you start the engines, but again, most of these switches, as far as I know, do work and they do serve a purpose. So yeah, it's a fairly well detailed 3D cockpit. See, we've got all the screens on now, and the commercial jets also come with an FMC. It's not a fully it's not a full fidelity FMC. It doesn't have all of the exact same functions that the real Boeing 737 would have. I think that the FMC and X-Plane is shared across the different commercial jets. So this one that you see here will be the same that you might find. The only other default commercial jet that they've got at the moment is a Boeing MD-80. Well, they've got an MD-80 and a Boeing 747 as well. But I think you get this same FMC in those aircraft. So I think it's just one generic FMC that will work with all of the default aircraft in X-Plane. But I just wanted to show that off very briefly for this video. So I think I've just about covered everything that I wanted to in this brief look at X-Plane. I'm definitely going to be spending a lot more time with this simulator because, quite honestly, and again, this is just my opinion, but quite honestly, I do believe that if X-Plane 11 gets support from some of the big flight sim developers out there like PMDG, which they've already got for X-Plane 10, then I suspect that X-Plane 11 might become a lot more popular within the flight sim world. So I guess I could be wrong, but I guess we'll all just have to watch this space. But yeah, I'm going to leave this video here. Let me just jump outside very quickly. I could hear something starting up. I guess it was just the aircon units in the plane. But yeah, there we go. So I'm going to leave you with this view here. So yeah, that was X-Plane 11 beta version. So we'll see what happens when the main release comes out. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but I might do a couple more videos in X-Plane in the future. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Take care out there, and I will catch you all later.